in terms of how I'd expect you to correct these, because it's all with some of these things we can delve into it too deeply, okay, and overcomplicate things for ourselves. The important thing to remember is, okay, we're marking this out of 100, right? Now it's 30% of, or it's not 30, it is 30% in the CA, I think. We'll double check on that and have that for you before the exam. I think it's 30%. If you think of it, this has been 100%, and we're going to have an hour and a half for this, so that's about 90 minutes, okay? So 100 marks in 90 minutes means there's roughly about a minute a mark, okay, give or take, okay, right? So if something's got 3 marks, you're talking about around about 3 minutes to complete it. So that should be an estimate on your part as to the amount of time you should spend doing it. The ones that have the more time for it, which would be around about 17 minutes, is the ones where you have to write code. So for them, you're talking about 17 marks, around about 20 minutes-ish, give or take-ish, to write the piece of code, which I think would be plenty of time, okay? But what it does do, by having that in our mind, just bear that in mind that, okay, this is going to take X amount of time. You have the ability with the quiz to move forward and backwards. So the questions are going to be randomized. So as I said, there's going to be 10 questions, which would be a code description. So you get an image of some code and you have to describe what's going on. And they're each worth 3 marks. Then there's going to be 3 questions with error fixing. So you have a piece of code which has 3 errors on it. Okay. Correctly identifying each error will be worth 2 marks. So there's 6 marks for each of those 3 questions. So if you think 6 marks, talk about 7 minutes for that, 5, 6, 7 minutes for that. And then write your own code. There's 3 of them, so there's about 17 minutes for them. Now, to try and make things a little bit more secure and cut back on communications between different people, right? They're going to be randomized, right? So you may or may not be getting the same questions that somebody else is getting, but they will all be within the same category. So there'll be 3 writing code, 3 error fixing, and the 10 describing what's going on. The order you'll be getting then will be randomized as well. So it's not really, well, there will be some overlap between the questions you get and questions somebody else gets. They are randomized to a certain extent. And because there's, the time limit on this is there for a reason. It's to kind of make sure that it cuts down on the possibility of communicating. Okay. So to do this exam, you're going to have to be focused. I would suggest that the best way of doing this is to actually, do it yourself and not be trying to interact with other students. Because if you do that, 2 things happen. Well, 3 things can happen. 1, it's going to slow you down, and you don't have an awful lot of time. 2, it's going to slow your friend or your classmate that you're working with down. So they're going to get interrupted in their thought process. And then thirdly is there's a good chance we'll actually figure out that yous were actually cooperating, and we'll have to bring you forward then to academic integrity, okay, which is a problem. And you might say, well, how did that happen, right? Funnily enough, it's not necessarily on getting the answer right that we figure these things out, okay? It's actually on when you get it wrong, okay? So if you have 2 people to get the same question wrong with the same wrong answer, it raises a question of suspicion, okay? And further on from that, if you get suspicion, then you might start looking at other questions and see a lot of similarities there. You can see, right, well, the only questions these people got right were the same questions, and the ones that they got wrong were the same questions, and they all had the wrong answer. That becomes very suspicious, okay? So that requires further investigation. And it is something that we're all checking out, because we have to check this out well for the final exams and that kind of stuff. So, and there are some tools in Moodle that we can use as well. So just the safest thing, the best thing is to keep it to yourself. Now, I happen to be on the our school academic integrity advisor. So I'm one of the people that advise staff members on academic integrity, which would be plagiarism and copying and cheating and so forth. So it's I'll just give you some feedback, okay? If two people cooperate in an exam like this, two people get called before the Academic Integrity Committee and two people can get in trouble. So it's not sufficient to say, well, I only gave them the answer, rather than, you know, you might think the person that asked for the answer or got it is the guiltier. They're not. Both of you are guilty, right? So just bear that in mind, right? Don't put pressure on your friends by asking them for the answer, and don't try to get yourself in trouble by giving the answer to other people. Okay, yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that for the moment. So getting into the questions here. So question one, and again, if there's any questions on any of this, just, you know, interrupt me as we go through here, right? Question one, describe what this code does, be as specific as possible, right? So it's a describe question. It means there's 3 marks going for it. So it means we've got 3 questions or 3 minutes to get this sorted out. And in actual fact, what I'll be looking for is I'll be looking for 3 statements that you're going to make about this piece of code. Okay, so what is the code? First of all, we're looking at it and we're saying, right, well, it's actually a function. It's a JavaScript function called test code 1, right? You've identified that. That's, to me, that's a mark. Okay, we've got a couple of strings here. We've got a variable the string, which is a document get element by ID town.value. We've got town initial is equal to the string dot substring 0, 1, right? So in here, I would say to myself, right, for another, and remember 1 mark we're looking at here is we've got a variable called town, and I would probably, in answering this, would start making a bit of an example of it for myself. So I might say, well, for example, the town could be Dundalk, or if you're in Drogheda, it could be Drogheda, or if you're in Navan, it could be Navan, or Cavan, it could be Cootehill, or whatever, okay? So I might say Dundalk, and the town initial then is the string dot substring 0, 1. Now, if you don't know what the method dot substring does, right? You could say, right, well, I'll just Google that. And yeah, grand, no problem, right? The problem though is that's going to take time. So you're better off knowing in your head. And at this stage, you should have a good idea with the different commands that we've used. But there may well be 1 or 2 commands you're there saying, oh, I haven't seen that before, or I can't remember exactly what it does. By all means, feel free in this exam to Google it. So you do substring 0, 1. So you know, right, substring is going to start at a particular index on the string, which is the string, which is the town, and its length is going to be 1. So it's actually going to take the first initial, which in my case would be D for Dundalk. Okay. So town initial then is equal to town initial dot to uppercase. So what does it do? So that's the second one that I'm looking at here. So probably for the second mark, it's going to create the, it's going to change the town initial, which could be D, to uppercase. So it's going to make it an uppercase D, right? The next bit here is if town initial is greater than uppercase A and if town initial is less than uppercase M, alert the string is group 1 town. Else if it's between N and Z, it's group 2 town, else it's group C town, right? So you would then say from that, right, because you've taken the case of it being Dundalk, it's D, so you're going to say it's group 1 town. If you happen to have taken the case of it being Waterford, you'd be able to come out then and say it's a case group 2 town, okay, and so forth. And that'd be literally what the 3 marks would be. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, grand. I'll move on to the next one then. So question 2 then, describe what the code does. And again, you know, just be as specific as possible. So it's setting up a variable x equal to 5. Now you need to know what is NaN, right? So if you know that it's not a number, then you know how that function works, okay? So if is NaN x, so if x is not a number, it'll alert 1, else it'll alert B, or it'll alert A, otherwise it'll alert B. So you just describe, now you need to be able to say what the alert actually means. So you might just say it will put up an alert dialog, okay? And that dialog will have the letter A in it or the letter B in it, okay? Then we have the question 3, write JavaScript to implement this scenario. Okay, So, whoops. Here is, and this is where you've got like 15, 20 minutes to write this piece of code. And as mentioned, somebody had asked during the spell we're doing this, could you use Notepad for doing this? Of course you can, right? I know I would if I was doing it. I'd try out the code and make sure it's right, because we all know that it's hard to make code. So in preparation for this exam, it might be no harm, if you like, having a kind of a default Notepad page set up that will allow you to very quickly start writing a bit of JavaScript code. Okay, so you might have a template there that you can actually go and check it out, and make sure you have your debugger and all that kind of stuff set up so that you can default what's going on. Give yourself the best chance in the world. Then what you can do is you can just copy and paste your code from and just put in the JavaScript code that you've written for this activity into your answer. Okay, so what you have here is a string from a text box, IDs with some text. So you would need to have a for to test this out in your own Notepad. You would need to have a text box with an input, with a text box or whatever, with some with an ID of some text in it. If one hash symbol in it, create a use. Okay, what you're looking at, if the text that you put into that input or a text box has a hash symbol in it, then you want to create a new string which contains all the other characters except hash in the same order. Otherwise, you leave it alone. Okay, so you want to do something like that. How would you do that? Okay, and you essentially would just write your piece of code that would actually implement that. So you're looking at some way of being able to remove the hash from your JavaScript code. Okay, so in terms of the answering or the answerability of this, again, you're just looking and saying, right, I'm going to write the code, get the code to do that, and then I'm going to pop it into the answer space on Moodle. Okay, the answer space on Moodle will be a little bit like a text box. Okay, so you can actually go and paste stuff into it. That okay there? No questions on that?
No questions.
Everybody got that?
Yeah.
Good. Okay, question 4 then. This code has 3 errors. So there are 3 errors in it. If you think you've found 4, it means one of the ones you've mentioned isn't, right? So my ruling on this will be it's a little bit like the mastermind quizzes and the university challenge quizzes. I will take your first answers, right? So if you put down 4 errors, I'm going to take the error 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to disregard answer 4 that you gave. Okay, so what would we be looking at for this, right? Now, you have had some experience with JavaScript. So you have had experience with having errors in your code. And all we're doing here is just replicating the same things, okay? So you're going to, in looking for errors in these codes, you're going to be looking at missing braces or inappropriately placed braces. That's the curly brackets. You're going to be looking for maybe uppercase, lowercase, or case sensitive errors. Okay, you're going to be looking for where methods are called JavaScript methods like get element by ID. We might have get elements by ID where an S in it or where it can't be, or so forth. Other type of things are going to be like spaces and inappropriate errors and that kind of stuff. Okay. So also you're looking at situations where you might have a method that's being called, but there's no parentheses on it. Okay, so we look at this one here, question 4. If in checking this myself, I would automatically go in and say, right, it's a function. So start in curly brace here, and I'm going to check where's the ending curly brace, and is it right? That looks okay, grand, no problem. So variable, the string is equal to doc get element by ID dot value. Okay, so you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, well that B in get element by ID, that should be an uppercase B, right? That should be a fairly straightforward one to get, right? That's a common one that's used all the time. Type initial the string dot substring 0, 1. That S there, right, should be lowercase, I think, right? And then I'm trying. I should have actually looked at these first and find out what the right ones were. I think that's the case. I think it should be. Now, I would, in a situation like this, then probably go and say, right, I'm just going to go here. Go to Google. I would myself have a Google search set up JavaScript. SCRI, and it's sub string. See that there? You can see, yeah, it is lowercase. It's not uppercase. Okay, so that is definitely the problem there. So I'd have that as one. And then looking down here, town initial dot to uppercase. Other things have, I think that should be a method rather than you should have the parentheses on it. Again, you can double check here. To uppercase. And you see here, yeah, is uppercase. It should have the parentheses on it for a method. Okay, so they would be the three. I would just, in terms of answering this, I'd be just, one space should be get elements by with the uppercase B ID. Should be dot substring lowercase s, and it's no harm. Remember you've got 3 minutes for this, so one for each minute. So you could go here like line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So you could say line 2 uppercase B and get element by ID. Line 3 lowercase s and dot substring. Line 4 dot to uppercase bracket, missing brackets or something like that. Okay, fair enough. Next one, what does this code do? Be as specific as possible, right? So remember, what does this code do? Is still three marks, right? So there's kind of 3 things we're looking at here. So the first bit is, and again, try and think about from our perspective what we would apply the marks for. So we're setting up a load of variables here. We're creating a mathematical formula, and then we're displaying the result. That's the 3 things that are going on. So you can say something like, setting up variables y, w, x, z, creating. Now we need here to see what dot round, dot seal, dot floor is. Okay, so probably the key point for action here really is that the marks are going for knowing what the math dot round is, what the math dot seal is, and what the math dot floor is, and then what the sum is. So the expectation in something like this would be that you would actually give the answer what sum is. Okay, so the sum of these 3 with these particular things, what that actually works out. Now, you're looking at this and you're kind of saying, well, what does round do, right? I need, in this case, you need to be kind of specific. What does seal do? What does floor do? Okay, so again, no harm at all coming in your Moodle. So you got your JavaScript, right? And you got math dot seal. Okay, what does it do? Get information here on it. Rounds a number up to the next largest integer, right? You've got math.floor. And it returns the largest integer less than or equal to a given number. What does that mean? So again, sometimes you might have to click a little bit further here to get the full details. This one here is great because it gives you the answer. So if you put in 5.95, it'll still return 5, okay? 5.05, it'll return 5. If you put in minus 5.05, it'll return minus 6. So it's bringing it back to the largest integer. And then what was the other one? Math.round.
Peter.
Yep.
Is the actual exam open book as well? Yeah.
Yep. Well, yeah,
Okay.
there's like and that's why I would say you use all the tools that are there, right? Now the problem you're going to have with and believe it or not, it is a problem with open book exams, is that you run out of time, because if you don't know where to go to quickly and get a good answer quickly, you're going to run out of time. Okay. This exam is set up for 90 minutes, knowing that, you know, to get all of the questions done, you're going to have to be fairly okay at doing it, right? But it's no harm in, you know, you have Google there, you have your books there, you have notes and that kind of stuff. That's no harm doing having that stuff there at all. You'll probably find actually that some of the code snippets that you're being asked for are probably things that we've already done. So you may well actually have the code there yourself, and it might just be a case of, you know, changing it slightly so that you conform to the, you know, the tag names we're using or the IDs that we're using. Okay, you shouldn't come across that and that we haven't covered in the module. So for something like this, you'd work out what rounding does, what ceiling does, what the floor does, and you'd give, there will be marks going for the right value of sum being alerted. And again, because you're asked to be as specific as possible, right? An alert says, you know, you get a dialog box being displayed, or a prompt or dialog box being displayed with a piece of text in it, and that piece of text will just be the number as a result of this. Okay. This error has 3 codes, so this is sort of very similar to this, right? Except it's probably used the same examples. You can see we're all getting very lazy with all of this here. So we're looking at what the errors are. Now, because these two come one after the other, it's fairly straightforward to see what it is, but because you have Google, it's going to be easy as well, right? So we have the definition of the variables. So again, remember what we're looking at here. We're looking at a variable has a word equal to, and then a something, in this case is numbers, and a semicolon after it. So we've got all semicolons there. We've got the math.run. Now, where can we get issue? Where can we put in little problems here? We could have a lowercase m, for example, right? That would be something that you could do. We see here we've got var sum colon, so that's not right. It should be equal. Okay, math.round plus math.round plus math.ceiling. Then ceiling. What's that now? It should be math.ceil, C-E-I-L, and then you got math.floor as a cert. So that's one error there with the colon, one error there with the ceiling. There's supposed to be 3 errors. The last one must be here with the console.log, and you'll realize it should be lowercase log rather than uppercase log. Fairly straightforward. Okay. Describe what this code does, be as specific as possible. Get number, parse int document.get element by ID to num.value. Document get element by ID, first paragraph dot class name equals class name plus get number, right? So what is actually happening here is, and again, you're looking at describing what the code does. So we're looking at kind of the market scheme there. So we've got get element by ID. So it's going to get the value that has been entered in the whatever, probably an input, okay, the number. You're doing a parse int, so it's going to convert it to an integer. So you need to mention that, okay, and then it's going to document get element by ID class name is equal to class name plus get number. Okay, so it's going to change the class name to class name plus get number, whatever that number happens to be. So there must be a number of different classes based on number, and it'll change it to that. Okay. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Describe what this code does, be as specific as possible. So you've got get element by, sorry, sun starting to shine in here. Get element by ID list.value. So if list.value is equal to the letter lowercase a, then it will change the style, that background color to that color. Else it will change the text of the ID first paragraph to that background color. Okay, and that's all you have to say. What does this code do? String document get element ID, the text box dot value, setting up a result equal to string of null. Variable L is equal to string dot length, and then for the variable I string, Remember, the string is what's been in the text box. Dot length -1. I greater than or equal to 0. I minus equal 1. Okay. So what you should realize from that I minus equal L, sorry, minus equal L is going to subtract 1 from L. So if and again, sometimes for ourselves, it's good to pick text. So you might say, like, for, you know, well, the element in text box, let's say, is Dundalk, right? So the length is going to be DUNDALK. It'll be 7 letters, so L is going to be 7. So this is going to start off variable I equal to the string length. So string dot length is 7. -1 is 6. I greater than or equal to 0. Yeah, it is. And then I minus equal to L. So it's going to be starting off with L equal to L minus 1. No, I minus equals L. So I is going to be equal to L minus 1 is 6. Okay. So result plus equals string at character I. So it's going to build up the string at character I, which is going to be K. Because remember, the string is goes from 0, 1 index, goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, even though the length is 7. Okay. And eventually it's going to alert the string. So it's going to say the string becomes the result. Okay. So that should actually print out the text backwards. Okay. Then 10, write JavaScript code to implement this scenario. The user types in 3. Now, just on that previous one, you could see there that, well, actually, no, if you had time to type out all of that, it would make really perfect sense, wouldn't it? Right? But the thing is, though, you won't have time to do that for everyone, right? So be very, very careful of your timing on this. What will happen at the end of the time period is it will just save whatever answers you have, okay? So just bear that in mind. Write JavaScript code to implement this scenario. User types in 3-digit integer into a number box whose ID is equal to the num. If the 3 digits adds up to 20, convert this number text box to a password text box. If the 3 digits, when multiplied, give 24, disable this text box. Otherwise, leave this text box alone. Okay, so there's a nice little bit of logic to actually implement there. And again, bear in mind, and I would set the timer on your phone for these things, guys. I've got 15, 17 minutes for this, whatever. Okay, and have the timer there so that it'll go off and you don't run over time. If you build up time, okay, so there's going to be some questions you'll just say, yeah, I could do that in 5 minutes. That gives you an extra 10 minutes. So keep an eye on the clock, okay, on what you're doing. So that'll be an interesting one to do. Anybody want any direction on that? Are you all okay with how you'd go about doing that? Okay, take that as being positive. Question 11, this code is 3 errors. Describe what and how you would fix the code. Variable a string is equal to whatever that is. If string index off space is string dot index last index off space, alert yes, else alert no. Okay. So this code is 3 errors. So the first one is variable is equal to that looks like a variable, that's fine. If a string dot index off space is equal to string of index off space, right? So see, this is a common error that can occur here, where we have an if, a logical if, and we just have an assigned equal being put there. Okay, so this is going to make this is going to cause an error, because it should be equal 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 or equal equal rather than just a single equal. Okay. Then we've got a brace, left brace here, left brace there, else left brace, that's okay. So this one will alert yes, and this one will alert no. So there should be 3 errors. So we've seen 1. I would suspect last index off. I imagine that should be capitalized text. And again, remember what, you won't remember every method that we've used, or every method that's available in JavaScript, but we should at this stage be aware that JavaScript methods use camelized code, which means the first letter of the first word will be lowercase, but the first letter of every subsequent word will be uppercase. Okay, so I would question that. So again, I would probably go in here and I would go JavaScript last index IND off, right? And we see here that it's last uppercase I index uppercase O. So that there should be uppercase I, right? So if bracket, and we've got a starting left parenthesis there. We don't have an ending right parenthesis for it, okay? So see this one here, if left parenthesis, that doesn't have a corresponding right parenthesis. So that's the three errors. The double or the single equal here, the lowercase I here, and the missing parenthesis there on the right. Okay. Then the last one, describe this code, be as specific as possible. The string is equal to A, B, C, D, E, F. X equal to the string dot substring 0, comma mat dot floor, the string dot length divided by 2 bracket bracket dot length, right? So what it's going to do is it's going to get the string length. So again, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So mat dot floor, you need to be able to understand what the dot floor is. The string dot length divided by 2. So that is going to be 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 divided by 2 is 3.5, but you're doing the mat dot floor. So it's going to be 3. So it's going to take the string 0, length of 3, right? That's going to be ABC. And it's looking for the dot length, so it's going to be 3 anyhow. And then this one here is going to take max seal, string length divided by 2. 3.5 would be 4. Dot length would be 4. So it should log 12, I think is the answer. Is that right? Am I reading that properly? For anybody that done it? Okay, right. So